If you want to repair or replace a faucet in your kitchen or bathroom, you want shutoff valves under the sink because you don't want to have to shut off water to the entire house. If you don't have shutoff valves, or the ones you have are leaking, let me show you how to install a SharkBite shutoff valve. I've installed sinks, toilets, redid the plumbing in our house. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to select the correct valve, how to cut the pipe, how to prepare the pipe. Now that's the most important step. And then how to install the SharkBite shutoff valve. And the nice thing about this is that you don't need any special training or tools, and it usually takes under an hour. One of the things I really like about SharkBite fittings is that they're easy for us DIYers to use. They don't involve you using a torch with a flame, having to learn how to solder, or having to invest in specialized tools. Now, for shutoff valves, SharkBite makes two different types of valves, and it depends on how the pipes come into the cabinet. So if the pipes come up from the floor, then you're going to use a straight shutoff valve. If the pipes come in from the wall, then you're going to use an angled shutoff valve. See, in both cases, what you want is you want that attachment where the faucet supply line screws onto. You want that to be at the top. It just makes the cabinet a little less cluttered because the pipe goes straight up to the faucet, and you can usually use a bit of a shorter supply line up to your faucet. Now, both of these types of shutoff valves are quarter turn ball valves. I like these because they're really easy to turn off, and they're much more reliable than the gate valves that you have to turn a whole bunch of times in order for them to turn off. Most of the SharkBite fittings that are available today are the SharkBite Max fittings. They've been improved from the original. They're easier to use, and they have a number of other benefits that they have added into this newer generation. You can find them at almost all the big box home improvement stores and from Amazon. I'll link to a bunch of the SharkBite fittings, including the shutoff valves, in the description down below. Recently, when I was replacing a faucet in our master bathroom, I had to also replace a leaking shutoff valve. Because the pipes come in from the wall there, I used the angle shutoff valve. And I videotaped the whole thing so you could see how this is done in a real world situation. Before you start working on any of the water pipes in your house, make sure you turn off the water at the water main. So here's the video of me turning off the water that supplies the pipes in this particular area of our home. First thing we need to do is to turn off the water coming into the house or to that area if you have that option. So this is the shutoff valve for our house. But what I did a number of years ago is I installed shutoff valves for two different areas of our house. So I can use these shutoff valves here to shut off the water that goes to that bathroom. Once you've turned off the water, then what you want to do is you want to open up taps that are high up in your house. So for me, that's on our second floor. So I opened up taps there. I also opened up taps on the main floor, and most importantly, in the basement. What happens then is that the water in all the pipes drains out by gravity into the basement. Faucets that are turned on, it drains out. That gives you drier pipes where you are working, for me on that top floor. Because if you don't do this, there's still water pressure in those water lines, and you cut into it and you have water spraying everywhere. So make sure you drain the lines, get gravity to help you, just drain it down in your home, open up those taps down at the bottom of your house so the water drains out before you do the next step. In my case, and most of the cases you're going to run into, the pipe already has a fitting soldered onto it. Either it's an existing shutoff valve, or it could be just an angle that gives you the supply line attachment. Now there are two ways to remove this. The first way is to actually heat up that fitting and the solder with a blowtorch. Once you heat it up enough, then carefully you can pull that fitting off of the copper pipe. Now for me and most people, I'm not comfortable using a blowtorch in a cabinet that's wood, and because that pipe might have water in it and that might quickly boil into steam. That's why most of us are going to choose the second method for removing that fitting from the copper pipe, and that's to cut it. The easiest way is to use a pipe cutter. These sorts of pipe cutters simply snap onto the pipe. They have different sizes. 1/2-inch supply line is most of the time what you're going to see in a house, a 1/2-inch pipe. And so you simply snap it on, look at the arrows, and rotate it in the direction of those arrows. After about 5 or 7 full rotations, it usually cuts through because it's spring-loaded. The cutter is cutting into that pipe. So let me show you how I cut the pipe under the sink to remove the existing shutoff valve that was leaking. I'm going to open this up so that the water that's in there right now will drain out. Okay, you want to have a bucket underneath, cloth underneath, because it's going to come out. I'm going to use my pipe cutters, and you can see that there is an arrow that shows you which direction to turn it, and this style just clips onto the pipe. Then you turn it in the direction of the arrows. So I'm going to clip it onto the pipe here past where the current valve is. This is spring loaded, so you don't have to tighten it, the cutter wheel, as you go along. You just have to keep turning it and it will cut through. Usually takes 5 or 6 full rotations, sometimes a little more. There we go. Okay, so now the copper pipe has been cut. Now, if you don't have enough pipe in the cabinet to get that pipe cutter in there and cut it off, because it's, you know, the pipes are cut really close to the wall or to the floor, then you're probably going to have to use a saw. Now, you can use either an oscillating tool, you can use a hacksaw to cut right at the edge of that old fitting, so you have as much pipe as possible. You want to have about 1.5 inches of pipe to use the SharkBite fittings. When you're cutting, be careful. You really need to make sure it's a straight cut on the pipe, not at an angle. So sometimes doing it manually, where you have more control, is actually a better solution than the quicker method of using, let's say, an oscillating tool with a metal blade, where it's going to cut through that pipe quickly, but you may not have as much control. In the case that you do have to cut the pipe, you're going to have to really make sure that the next stage, prepping the pipe, is done very carefully, because it's going to be a rougher cut than the pipe cutter tool will make. Preparing the pipe for the SharkBite fitting is the most important step by far. I have made a number of mistakes in doing this in the past. In fact, I have a whole video on mistakes I've made that have caused SharkBite fittings to leak. I'll link to that video down in the description below. So let me show you in this next segment how I cleaned the pipe. You're going to see me ream the inside of the pipe, clean the outside of the pipe, and ream the outside of the pipe. The inside, I'm just going to use a pair of pliers to clean it up. And what you're doing is you don't want any little bits of copper that are sticking out inside, because it causes turbulence in the pipe as the water's flowing through, and that can cause a problem with the valve. I'm just going to use a pair of pliers here and rotate them in there to get it nice and smooth. Now, to clean the outside of the pipe, I'm going to use some plumber's cloth, sometimes called emery cloth, and I'm going to really get it nice and shiny all around. Most of the time your pipe is going to be held into the wall tighter than mine is. This just wasn't something that was done well when we did this before. So you want to make sure the pipe is clean, wipe it off, and you want to make sure it's nice and bright, at least more than 1 inch back from the end, because the SharkBite fitting that we're going to use needs just about 1 inch of
pipe to slide onto. And the next thing you need to do, and again, putting a SharkBite on, follow the steps that they recommend. I've got a whole video on 6 mistakes I've made that cause leaks. And one of the mistakes that I made early on, which you don't want to make now, is to ream the outside. And so I'm going to use the special SharkBite tool here. And this is a 1/2 inch pipe, so I'm going to use the 1/2 inch. And it has a little cutter wheel that sticks into that. And I'm going to make sure it goes all the way around on all sides, getting all sides of the outside of the pipe. And this is critically important because you want to make sure that there is no rough part of the pipe that's going to cut into the O-ring of the SharkBite. So make sure you go all the way around. It might be a little difficult with the plumbing there, but do everything that you can to make sure that it's nice and smooth.
You saw me use plumber's sanding cloth. That is the only type of sandpaper SharkBite recommends you use. I spoke with one of their technical support experts to confirm this. Do not use regular sandpaper. It is too rough and it will either deform the pipe so it won't be round, or you'll take too much material off and the pipe will be smaller and it won't be big enough to actually seal with the O-ring inside of the fitting. The second thing to note is to always use the SharkBite reaming tool for the reaming of the outside of the pipe. Now, I tried to skip this when I first started using SharkBite fittings, and boy, was that a mistake. Always use the reaming tool, whether you have copper, PEX pipe, whenever you're using a SharkBite fitting. Just invest in the tool. Save yourself all the heartache that I had when I had to constantly fix the leaks. Before you push the SharkBite fitting onto the pipe, always use the SharkBite reaming and measurement tool to measure how far you have to push the fitting onto the pipe. You want to make sure it's gone all the way and seals properly. So let me show you the video where I marked and pushed on the SharkBite fitting.
The other thing we need to do with this tool is mark the depth. So I'm going to hold it on. I'm going to take a permanent marker. I'm going to mark around so I can now see how far I have to push the fitting onto the copper. Now, this fitting typically comes, this is a shutoff valve. It's a 90 degree because I want the shutoff valve to come up as opposed to what it was sticking out. It'll give me a little more space in this cupboard, but it comes with this additional sleeve here. This is primarily if you are using it in a toilet application and you want this to look good. I don't need that for what I'm doing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this 3/8 compression because I'm not going to need that. I'm going to make sure that it is in the open position, so pointing up towards where the outlet is before I put it on. Then I'll close it. So I'm going to position it, hold the pipe, and push it on until it reaches that mark that I've made. If you can't see the mark, certainly take your phone, take a picture to make sure it reaches the mark. Then I'm going to figure out which direction this valve goes. This direction. Okay, so it's a little hard the first time, but again, the nice thing with the SharkBite is once it's on, you can then rotate it as you need to, connecting your supply line.
Now I ended up replacing the other shutoff valve as well in this cabinet. And I want to show you the video of me pushing that SharkBite fitting on because I want you to see it's not always smooth like my first one was. You'll notice in this video that I had to take my time to make sure I had pressure in the correct direction so I could properly slide it on all the way to that mark. And it's one of the reasons why having that mark is so important, to make sure that the fitting goes all the way onto that pipe. Once you have the valves installed on the pipes, then make sure that the handle on the valve is in the off position. The off position is so that the handle is not pointing at that outlet that's going to the faucet. So if the outlet is pointing up, the handle is in that off position, not pointing up, pointing to the side. So here's a video of me making sure that the valves are off and testing to make sure that there are no leaks from the valve I've just installed.
So I turned the water on a little bit, checked it, nothing. So I turned it on more to full, checking it again, and nothing. If you do find a leak, you shut the water off and you take the SharkBite fitting off and go through the steps. Again, I'll link to the video that I have on mistakes that I've made that have caused SharkBites to leak. But if you follow the steps correctly that SharkBite tells you, you should be able to add these shutoff valves to your existing plumbing without many problems and without a leak. And it's a great way now to have a shutoff valve on. Now I can continue on the project I was working on, which is replacing the faucet for this sink.
Whenever I post a SharkBite video, I always get somebody asking, well, what do you do if there is a leak? If you have a leak, start again by shutting all the water off to the house, draining the water so the water is out of those pipes. Then remove the SharkBite fitting using the proper SharkBite tool to do that, and go through and make sure you've followed all the steps. This is where my video on the 6 mistakes is really helpful, because I show you exactly how to remove a fitting and you can make sure you've followed those steps. Most of the time you'll just realize, oh, I skipped this one or I didn't do that one properly. You'll fix that up, reinstall the valve, and it won't leak again. When everything's properly installed and not leaking, then you can install the supply lines according to the supplier's instructions to the top part of that SharkBite valve where you have the 3/8 inch compression fitting to screw onto. So let me show you how I installed the supply lines for my new faucet to the SharkBite shutoff valves.
Okay, I have my new supply lines I need to attach to my shutoff valves. Lined up, make sure they go on by hand first, and snug it up with your adjustable wrench. Again, not over tightening because you don't want to cause a problem. Okay, so again, this is my hot on that side, and my cold is on this side. So your supply lines aren't always going to line up with where your taps are. Okay.
Once you've got the faucet all installed, the supply lines are hooked up, before you go and actually run water through that faucet, always remove the aerator from the faucet. You want to do this because if you simply start running water, what will happen is that there could be tiny little bits of debris from either cutting the pipe, cleaning the pipe, maybe if it's a new supply line, maybe there's some debris in there. And that will get caught in the aerator. So what you want to do is remove the aerator, then run the hot and the cold for at least 15 seconds each. That's usually enough to get that water, get the debris out into the sink, and then shut the water off at the handles, reinstall the aerator. This can avoid a lot of problems where the aerator doesn't work, it sprays in different directions, and it's because there's this little bits of debris in the aerator from the work that we did. I think any pipe that supplies a faucet in a home should already have a shutoff valve on it. installed by the builder. But if your home is 25 years old or older like ours is, chances are they didn't do that. In newer homes with PEX piping, they usually have shutoff valves for each of the sinks. If you have older shutoff valves, then they can leak because they do wear out, especially the gate valve style. Now that's not going to be a problem for you because you know how to either remove and replace or to add on a SharkBite shutoff valve for those pipes that supply every faucet in your home. I'll link to all the supplies and tools that I used in the description down below. If you found this particular video helpful, here are some other videos I think you'll also enjoy. Thanks for watching.